Okay, hello everyone. Okay, so the next program in chapter 5 is even odd counter. Okay, so you can use the following logic to determine whether a number is even or odd. If the number modulus 2 is equal to 0, meaning if the number divided by 2 gives you a remainder of 0, okay, then the number is even. Else, then the number is odd. Okay, so just pull out my calculator here just to explain it quickly. I know we already know this, but I just like to explain it just so we understand. So, for example, to tell if a number is even or odd, we can just say 8. Let's check to see if 8 is even or odd. We know it's even, right? So we are dividing. With the modulo sign, you're dividing by 2. We don't want the answer of 8 divided by 2. We don't want the answer of 8 divided by 2 because 8 divided by 2 gives us 4, right? We don't want that answer. When you use a division sign, that's what gives us 4. But when you're using the modulo sign, it doesn't give us the answer. It gives us the remainder of the division. So we're checking to see if 8 is even. So we divide by. It's basically modulus 2, right? But 8 modulus 2 is basically give me the remainder of 8 divided by 2. So 8 divided by 2 gives us 4, but we're not interested in 4. We were interested in the remainder. What's the remainder? 0. Okay, it always gives us a remainder of 0. Any even number divided by 2 gives us a remainder of 0. Now let's try to check for, let's say, 5. Just check to see if 5 is an even or odd. 5 divided by 2, let's check to see the remainder. Gives us 2.5. So 2 remainder 0.5. So because we get a remainder of not 0, because we get a remainder of something different than 0, that number is not odd. So in that case, 5 is not odd. We can check, let's say, 4 to see if 4 divided by 2, it gives us 2 remainder 0. So in that case, 4 is an even number. Okay, another last example. I know you already know this. I just like to explain this. All right, so 3 divided by 2 gives us a remainder. It gives us 1 remainder 0.5. So because it gives us 0.5, it's not an odd. It's not an even number. It's an odd number. An even number gives us a remainder of 0. An odd number doesn't give us a remainder of 0. So that's one logic to find out if a number is even or odd. Now the question says, write a program with a method named isEven that accepts an int argument. So it's going to accept an integer argument. The method should return true if the argument is even or false otherwise. Okay, so just like this. The program's main method should use a loop to generate 100 random integers. It should use the isEven method to determine whether each random number is even or odd. When the loop is finished, the program should display the number of even numbers that were generated and the number of odd numbers, basically, that were generated. Okay, so let's start, and we have an idea of the program. So let's start, and the more we write the program, the more we'll make sense of it. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and create the class. And I'll call this even odd counter. And then I'll go ahead and create the main method. Okay. Maybe I should start. Yeah. All right. I'll go ahead and create the main method. I'll close this for now. All right. So we know that we are going to be creating a method. So let's start from here. Write a program with a method named isEven. So we know we're going to be creating an isEven method that accepts an int argument. We know it's going to be accepting an int argument. So let's start defining a method. In all the chapter 5 videos, I've mentioned that some people like to define their methods right below the main method. That's fine. It's going to work. As long as you have the method defined, you can even call it in main. It doesn't matter if the method is below main. It's still going to work. Okay, as long as you define it, it's available. But I sometimes like to keep mine above main, so I'll do that, and that also works. I do that because sometimes I mix it up. Sometimes I define it above the main method. Sometimes I define it below the main method. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and define it above the main method. So I'm going to create a method called isEven, which is going to accept an integer argument and return true or false. So I'm going to create a public static method. Public because it's going to be a method which is public or available to code outside this class. And it's static because it's going to be a method that belongs to this class. Now I'm going to define the return type. Now this method is going to return true or false. It's going to return true if the number is even. Over here it says, over here, let's find it. The method should return true if the argument is even or false otherwise. So public static, I'm going to set the return type to a boolean. So public static boolean, because boolean is a data type, that can basically hold that is either true or false, pretty much. So it's going to return a boolean, and now we just need to enter the name of the file, which is isEven. Okay, so now we're done defining the file. We're done defining the method. Okay, I don't know why I'm mixing words. So this is the return type, boolean, and this is the name of the method. Okay, all right. Sorry, I forgot the two parentheses. Now we need to specify, since this method is going to return true. Let's see. Okay, so we've already done that. We've already specified the boolean expression. Let's see. The program. Okay, so we know that it's going to accept an int argument over here. Okay, we know it's going to accept an int argument. So since it's going to accept an int argument, I'm going to go ahead and define an int parameter. Okay, so it's going to accept a parameter, an argument. So I'm defining a parameter here, and it's going to be an integer because it said here that it's an integer. I'm going to call that, just give it a name over here. I'm going to call it number. Okay, so public static boolean isEven, it's going to accept a number argument, which is an integer. Now in the method, we have to define what the method is going to do. So we can use this logic over here, just like I explained before, and just like it was stated, it was given to us. So if, let me go ahead and create a structure. Okay, so if basically the number that we've been given over here, so if the number that we have been given modulus 2, meaning divided by 2, gives us a remainder of 0. Okay, and that's around this. Okay, so if that number modulus 2 gives us a remainder, gives us 0, then what we want to do is go ahead and return. No, actually, we don't need it. We don't need whether it's, well, we can go ahead and return true or false. And let's see. Okay, so the program said it, was clear about it, that we should return true or false. Okay, all right, fine. So in that case, if the number is even, meaning if the number modulus 2 or divided by 2 gives us a remainder of 0, then let's go ahead and return true. Else, okay, if it's anything other than what's stated above, if it's anything other than 0, if that number divided by 2 doesn't give us 0, then that number is odd. So in that case, else, then return false. Okay, so now we know this method, given a number, will return true if the number is even, or false if the number is not even. Okay, so now in main, we can go ahead and check to see basically the return type, or basically what was returned. When we call the method and we give it a number, we can check to see what was returned. Now the program also mentioned over here that when the loop is finished, let's see, over here, I mentioned over here that the program's main method should use a loop to generate 100 random integers. It should use the isEven method to determine whether each random number is even or odd. So we know we are going to need the random class since we're going to be generating random numbers, right? So anytime we want to generate random numbers, we have to go ahead and import the random class. So I'm going to do that. To import the random class, you type import java.util.random. Okay. Now we have to go ahead in main and create a random object so we can use the random object to generate random numbers. Okay, so I'm going to create a random object. I'm going to call it random. I'm creating a new random object in memory here. And the program said we should use a loop over here. The program's main method should use a loop to generate 100 random integers, right? So we're generating 100 random integers, right? So we are starting from 1 all the way to 100. So let's create a loop that starts from 1 all the way to 100. I'm going to create a for loop. I'm going to initialize a variable. I'm going to call it current number. We wouldn't need, okay, I wouldn't need this number necessarily, but current number, well, we can use it if we want. But current number is going to start from 1. I'm initializing current number to 1. And as long as current number is less than or equal to 100, then current number plus plus, meaning as long as current number is less than or equal to 100, do what's in the loop, and before you come back up and check to see if current number is less than or equal to 100, add 1 to it. So what's going to happen is initially current number is going to start from 1. It's going to check to see if 1 is 1. Okay, current number is less than or equal to 100. If it is, it's going to go ahead and do what's in the loop. And then before it comes back up and check to see if current number is less than or equal to 100, it's going to add 1 to it. So now current number is going to be 2. It's going to go ahead and check again to see if 2 is less than or equal to 100. Do what's in the loop, add 1 to current number and check again. It's going to check to see if 3 is less than or equal to 100. And it's going to basically start current number with 1. Check to see if current number is less than or equal to 100. Do what's in the loop, add 1 to current number and keep asking. So basically this loop is starting from a 1 to 100. It's basically iterating 100 times, and that's what the program wants us to do. Use a loop to generate 100 random integers. So each time we run, we know the loop is going to iterate 100 times. So each time we want to generate a random number, right? So I'm going to use the random objects that we created over here. Right? Random. I'm going to call random.next int. I'm generating a random integer because sorry, the method we defined over here is basically going to take as an argument an integer, okay, variable, or an integer number, not a variable, an integer number. Okay, so what we want to do each time is we want to generate a random an integer. The program didn't tell us the range we should create an integer in. If we leave it this way, basically it's going to create a big range for us. We can have a number as big as 2 million or even 3 million. We want to try to limit it. Okay, let's try to limit it. It doesn't necessarily matter, but let's try to limit it, just in case we're going to need these random numbers for something. It doesn't necessarily matter. All right. So I want to go ahead and create a random number in the range. Let's see. I'm going to create a number in the range. First of all, I'm going to type in 10. Okay, 10 basically is going to create a random integer. This statement is going to create a random integer in the range of 0 to 9. Okay, so this upper limit over here, the 10 we type over here, is not included. It's not included. It's starting from 0 all the way to 9. Okay, and then because it's given us numbers from 0 all the way to 9, I want numbers from 1 all the way to 10. It doesn't necessarily matter. I can leave it this way. And this is going to generate another number in the range of 0 to 9. I want to shift it by 1, meaning we have 0 to 9. We had 0 to 9. We have 0 to 9 when it's like this, right? But if I shift it by 1, by putting +1 outside the parentheses, I've shifted everything by 1. I've shifted the position by 1, meaning 0 goes to 1 and 9 goes to 10. So now it's going to generate a random number in the range of 1 to 10. That's what the statement is going to do. Okay. So once it does that, I want to store that in a variable. Okay. Once it generates a random number in the range, a random integer in the range of 1 to 10, I want to store it in the variable. I'm going to store it in a variable. I'm going to create a variable called, it's going to be an integer because it's going to store this integer number, this integer random number. I'm going to call that variable random, let's see, random number generated. If you want, you can call it. I like to name mine long names, it's fine. Random number generated. Okay. And then now random number generated is going to store the random number that was generated in the range of 1 to 10. Okay, so each time we iterate, we know we are iterating 100 times. Each time we iterate, we want to generate a random number in the range of 1 to 10. And we want to check to see if that random number, okay, return true. Okay, we want to check to see if that random number return true. So in the for loop, I'm going to create an if statement. After we've generated a random number, we want to check to see if that random number is an even number or an odd number. Or basically, we know that, but the program wants us to, over here, it says when the loop is finished, the program should display the number of even numbers that were generated and the number of odd numbers that were generated, right? So first of all, we know we've generated a random number here. So let's go ahead and check to see if that random number is, I'll just go ahead and close this. Check to see if that random number is an even number or an odd number. So if, okay, now I'm going to call the method if is even, and is even takes an argument, right? And the argument we want to pass to C is this random number that was generated in the range of 1 to 10. We want to check to see if that number is even. So if is even random number generated. If the random number generated is an even number, the program wants us to, when the loop is done, the program wants us to display the number of even numbers that were generated and the number of odd numbers also. We need a variable to keep track of the number of even numbers that were generated. So I'm going to create that. In the main method, I'm going to go ahead and create an integer for integer variable because it's going to keep track of a count, the count of the number of even numbers and the number of even numbers that were generated. So I'm going to call this variable number of even numbers. But if you are counting the number of even numbers, initially we know that it's 0. Before the program starts, we know that it's 0. So I'm going to initialize it to 0 initially. So anytime we find that a random number generated is an even number, now the code in this if block will run only if this whole statement here returns true. Now, if the random number we've passed into the isEven method is an even number, indeed, it's going to return true. So this statement here is going to return true or false depending on whether the random number generated is an even number or an odd number. If it returns true, now this code inside this if statement is going to run only if what's in these parentheses is true. And this even method, the isEven method with the number passed into it is going to return true if that number is even. It's going to return false if that number is not even. So if the number is even, what we want to do is we want to add 1 to the number of even numbers, meaning we found an even number. So add 1 while it's iterating. You generate a random number, check to see if that number is an even number. If it's an even number, add 1 to number of even numbers, meaning we found one even number. So in that case, number of even numbers is going to be equal to what's already stored in number of even numbers plus 1. Number of even numbers initially was 0, right? So initially when we're counting, it's 0. When we find an even number, add 1 to number of even numbers. So it's going to be 0 plus 1. 0 plus 1 gives us 1. Now 1 is going to store the number of even numbers. If the program runs again and we find another even number, number of even numbers will hold 1, will hold the value 1. So it's going to be 1 plus 1, and the number of even numbers is going to be 2. If we find another even number, number of even numbers is going to hold, let's say 2. Then now it's going to be 2 plus 1, which is going to evaluate to 3, and 3 is going to store the number. So basically, we are keeping track of the number of even numbers. And we are storing it in the number of even numbers here. Now, if that number is not, if it's even, if the method over here doesn't return true, meaning if it returns anything other than true, like let's say if false, if it returns false, if it's not true, then it's false, right? So I mean, according to this program, if it's not true, then it's false. So if it's even here, it doesn't return true, then do what's in the else block, meaning else meaning if it's not true, if this doesn't return true, then do what's in this else block. Now, if it's not true, then we know that that number is an odd number, right? So not if it's not true, if it's not true, then that means we found an odd number, basically. So we want to also keep track of the number of odd numbers, right? So I'm going to define a variable the same way I define a variable for a number of even numbers. I'm going to define a variable. It's going to be an integer. I'm going to call a number of odd numbers. I'm going to initialize that to 0 as well. 0 as well. And then anytime this doesn't return true, meaning anytime that number is not an even number, then we know that number is an odd number. So add 1 to number of odd numbers. Number of odd numbers is going to be equal to what's already stored in number of odd numbers. Plus 1. Now these two statements can be written in a shortcut form. So this can be written as, let's see, number of even numbers plus equals 1, meaning we are adding 1 to number of even numbers. Okay, we are adding 1 to number of even numbers. Okay, what we are adding to number of even numbers is 1. You can think of it, in those ways, if it makes sense. So I'm also going to change this to plus equals 1. Okay. All right. So basically, these two variables will basically keep track of our even numbers and our odd numbers. Okay. All right. Let's see. So when we are done with the loop, now we can go ahead and print a statement, a nice statement saying, oh, this number of even numbers were found, this number of odd numbers were found. Okay, that's what the program wants us to do. It says when the loop is finished, the program should display the number of even numbers that were generated and the number of odd numbers. Okay, so now let's display that. All right, so I'm going to use a system.out.println statements to do that. We can say this. We can say, you can say there were. Now, since we have the number of even numbers and number of odd numbers stored in their own variables, we can use them. So we can say there were. Let's start with the even numbers. There were number of even numbers there were, let's say, if let's say there are 27, it's going to say there were 27. Now we can continue the string and say even numbers, and now we can use the value stored in number of odd numbers, and this is the number of odd numbers. We can concatenate it with a string odd numbers. So basically we're done. Let's compile this program and see what happens. All right, so this was the previous program. I forgot to change it. All right, so I'm going to create a new folder in chapter 5, and I'm going to call this even odd counter, right? Yeah, even odd counter. And then I'll save it here. Okay, so we have a couple of errors. Let's see. It says cannot find symbol variable number of odd numbers. How did I define it? I define it over here as number of odd numbers with a capital U, and over here it's a small u. So it's a small u, so it doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know what these two are different. So I'm going to change this to small u so it matches with this, and I'll compile this. We have another error. Let's see. Cannot find symbol print system.out. Okay, over here it's supposed to be system.out.println, so I'll put the dots there. Compile this, and more errors. Cannot find number of odd number. It's supposed to be number of odd numbers with an S. Sorry, with an S over here, number of odd numbers. But over here I said number of odd number without an S. So I'm going to put the S there and compile this. All right, so now we're done. So let me run this program and see what happens. Okay, so now it says there were 55 even numbers and 45 odd numbers. And you realize that when you add both of them together, you get 100, because we're starting from 1 all the way to 100. Now we can start from 1 all the way to 10. So basically this is the starting point and this is the ending point. And then the total should basically give us 10. When I compile this and I run it, now it says there were 4 even numbers and 6 odd numbers. I can compile it again and run it. There were 3 even numbers and 7 odd numbers. There were 4 even numbers, 6 odd numbers. 6 even numbers, 4 odd numbers. Now, let me change it back to 100, and then that's what the program's asking for. So, there were 59 even numbers, 4 to 1. Try again. 44, 56. 46, 54. 53, 47. 48, 52. So we can see it's basically counting the number of even numbers, number of odd numbers. I'm yet to see like a really wide margin. I guess we haven't seen it. I want to see like 30 something. I haven't seen anything in the 30s. But yeah, that's what's happening. All right, or 60-40. Okay, now we see something different. All right, so this program works. If you have any questions, please comment down below, and I'll do everything to respond to them. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time in the next program. All right, bye-bye.